G'day everybody, and for those who have come in late, you're listening to Expand the Phans podcast.
He washed ashore the sole survivor of a shipwreck, and upon the skull of the man who killed his dad, he said, "I'm mad, I must eradicate piracy, injustice and cruelty, and all my sons will follow me, so evildoers will believe that this man cannot die." The Phantom, the ghost who walks. The Phantom, enemies beware. The Phantom's always there, but you won't find the Phantom.
Hello, we are the Chronicle Chamber team, and this is Expand the Phans podcast. Our website is chroniclechamber.com, and you can contact us via our email, which is chroniclechamber@gmail.com. You can subscribe to us via YouTube or through your favourite podcast apps, including iTunes and Spotify, etc., etc. Now, I didn't introduce the team, but there's just the one in team. Just as well, there is the I in win, because this is going to be a winning podcast. So this is episode 216, sorry, and we're going to chat with Phantom fan and creator Duncan Munro. How are you, Duncan?
Jermayn, I'm well. Thank you very much for having me on the podcast, despite the fact that the team have chosen not to show up, and I'll take that personally.
So you should. And Dan and Stephen, you have let the team down, but just as well, I'm still here. And Duncan, you are a very worthy replacement.
All Stephen has to do is show up and have a nap anyway.
That's true. Now, Duncan, from memory, the first time we met was, I think it was at Supernova with Terry Beattie, I think, from memory.
Yeah, Terry Beattie's Supernova, I think.
Yeah. And so I remember lining up, trying to fight everyone else to have a look at the original art, and then all the light suddenly disappears, and there's this 7 foot tall, 6 foot wide person sliding up alongside of me. He looks at me real cagey, and he goes, in this deep voice, and he goes, "Are you Jermayn Parker?" And I almost ran. And I'm like, yeah. And you go, "My name is Duncan, and I'm here because of you." And I'm just like, mate, what have I done? So that was the first time I ever met you, Duncan. Do you remember that?
It is, and so your listeners don't think that I was stalking you. What I meant by that comment of "I'm here because of you" is I was at the Sydney Supernova event because it coincided with my first time as a guest at the Lee Falk Memorial Bengali Explorers Club dinner, which I didn't even know existed until I listened to it on your podcast and found the contact details for the organisers on the Chronicle Chamber website. And so weeks before I had you'd been talking about on the podcast, and I've been able to arrange to get included in that invitation list because of you, and that's what I meant.
Yeah, no, it sounded better when I dramatised it, though. So I think Renee still has not forgiven me, because you were one of the only people that were actually able to outbid him. So it was a great enjoyment seeing Renee getting all flustered because he was not able to win everything.
It's all in the spirit of raising some money for some very worthy children.
It is, and it's an extra bonus to see Renee not getting everything. Let's be honest. So we've got you on tonight, basically because we want to have a bit of a chat. Because, as we said in the intro, you're one of the very few, and you're in a privileged position as well, where you're a fan first of all. And we've talked about your fandom with past podcasts with Sammy J. Your brother from another mother and stuff like that. You talked about how you're a fan from a younger person and all that. But you've got the unique perspective where you're a fan, but you're also a creator. Now, how does that kind of happen? Do you have to wear the two hats, or like where do you find, because you were a fan first and now you're a creator? How does that kind of happen? How does that, I guess, tell us about how you can juggle those two acts.
Well, it's not a matter of requiring a delineation between the two, because they're complementary. And by that I mean, as a collector, as a creator, I'm motivated by being a fan who wants to tell a story that I want to hear, a fandom story that I want to hear. I'm in a fortuitous position of having done a lot of research through wasted youth and wasted adulthood to enable me to at least be making an informed decision about some of the ideas that I pitch to the editorial team. And it's only through the generosity and support of the Frew crew, Team Phan, and the readers that I've been able to bring those stories to life, and amazing contributions from very, very talented creators like Jeff Weigel and Daniel Picciotto. On the other side, as a collector, it's complementary because I get to have my own stuff in my collection. And so I guess that's where the unique side is I'm one of the few fandom collectors that is part of their own collection.
Yeah, true. Now, we can see behind you that you're an art lover. Well, I can see, actually what I'll do is I'm just going to pin you while I talk. So that way, if you are on video, you'll be able to see some of the collection, even while I am talking. So I see 2 pieces by Paul Ryan. I see a Cy Barry. What else am I missing?
That's the cover art from Hero Complex by Jeff.
Yes.
I don't know if I can spin around enough for you to be able to see that. The first page of the script signed by him, and the first page of art signed
now,
by
did you sign it as well?
No, I knew what my signature was. The up on the wall here, you're obviously aware of that Paul Ryan piece that he did at that Lee Falkimsm, that first dinner that I went to. I think was that one.
No.
Paul was before Terry. Yeah, no, it was. Paul's was the first one.
Okay, Paul was the first one. All right. Okay.
And yeah, that's right, because Paul and Linda were the guests at that dinner. That's right. And this is Nicola's piece from dinner with the Phantom and Wonder Woman, which is an absolutely beautiful piece. And that one there is a Paul Ryan piece behind me too. I can't really get the maths right, the angles right. That's one of my favourite covers by Paul, which is the Dinah's Missing storyline.
From memory, that was also used as the centerfold for the tribute issue as well.
Yeah, it was.
That the only centerfold that most blokes are allowed to keep.
And you can see on the back, I've had it framed so it's transparent. Nicola's layouts are on the back.
Oh, wow.
And she does that to get the balance right, and then light boxes it and inks on the front. But yeah, that's an amazing piece. And again, from the Lee Falk Memorial Bengali Explorers Club dinner, and it's something I wouldn't have if it hadn't been for you. So my stalking has not been in vain.
I'll send you the commission price later.
It has been to the detriment of my bank balance.
Well, you would have spent it on something else, so no worries. Now, so I guess tell us, for those who have come in late and don't want to listen to the Cy Barry, or not the Cy Barry, the Sammy J podcast in 5 minutes. Now, this is a real 5 minutes.
Real 5 minutes. A chronicle chamber
5 minutes. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and about the history of yourself with the Phantom, and then we can get into some questions.
Okay, Duncan Munro, lifelong fan from Melbourne and Victoria. Have lived different places around Australia and have had the opportunity to visit fandom fans around Australia and in different countries around the world. My collection started from a Frew issue in the mid-90s and has continued since then. And my focus for my collection has been the Frew editions back to about 100 with a few under that. Phantom collectibles, and I'm steered by the things I like. So if I like the look of it, I'll get it. I'm not as much of a completist as I had been in the past. And Phantom art, which you're very well aware of, and as you've indicated by the things you've seen behind me.
No worries. So what would be your most prized possession?
Funny you should ask. It's almost like you told me you're going to ask that question. And my most prized possession is this piece here, which again, I've got to try and line up to the camera, which is the original art for Alex Ross's cover for issue 10 of The Last Phantom by Dynamite. This piece hangs on my wall with pride. It is absolutely amazing interpretation of the different generations of the Phantom. It's a beautiful piece of work, as all Alex's stuff is, and one of the only original pieces I've got from him. The rest are high quality prints, and you can see through that rainbow kind of arc that goes up there. It's indicative of the time period of each of those generations of the Phantom.
Yeah, I would agree. That's probably the best piece that I've seen him do, and the detail, I was going to make mention of that in the rainbow is just amazing. It's like if anyone's got that comic, have a look at it. And from afar, if you have a quick look at it, you lose a lot of that detail. So that is a great piece. Now, was that north of 10 grand?
I won't disclose what that was worth. It was my 30th birthday present to myself. And too many people I know listen to this. So I won't disclose what that is. But it's in my will.
In your will? Oh, is that the piece that you were giving to me?
Not to you. You've got a drawing I did coming to you.
So while we're talking about collections, now you said that's something that you only collect things that you actually enjoy or that catch your eye and stuff like that. So what's something that you would never ever add to your collection?
Right. Get ready to either cut this bit out in post, or I will be ready for the onslaught of hate mail that I'm going to get from the Australian fans for this. The Phantom Sirocco. Zero interest in a Phantom Sirocco.
Oh wow!
You could give me one, and I would offload it.
Really? So what is it about the Sirocco that you just don't understand, that you just hold zero interest to you?
And this is where I will take some of the heat off myself, but it's obviously me, because so many people I've spoken to who are passionate about them love them, and I respect and admire that passion. I just don't share it. To me, they're creepy. If you're a kid and you're 5 and someone went, "I got something for you to play with," and they showed you this little voodoo doll carved of wood, like a bit of a melted face person, it would terrify me. And it makes no sense, because I didn't know of them until I was an adult. Like, I didn't have a traumatic experience with a Phantom Sirocco as a kid. But it looks like it's of its age. Like it was at the time. It would have been an incredible thing that for someone to own, who was reading these Phantom dailies cut out from the newspaper. Not for me.
So do you think maybe a lot of it's got to do with the exclusivity of it, like the rarity, the fact that it is from 1944? It's probably one of the first few Phantom memorabilia pieces, and that's kind of increased its value, but also its desirability.
Well, I think the desirability is the reasons you've listed, and also because the collectors that I've spoken to who have them or want them are passionate about it. It's something that they want and want to own in their collection, and want to take pride in owning and looking at, which is what all the things are in my collection. And that's why when I was younger, I used to buy everything that had the Phantom on it, and then I started to offload things that I didn't really care for, and I think that's something that most collectors would do, regardless of what they're collecting. Is you prioritize things that you care about over things.
Yes.
You're not to have. You can't have everything. Where would you put it?
Yeah, well, you need a bigger house. I think now I've got it, but I've got one of them, but I've only got it because it is deemed one of the probably the 20 top collectibles and stuff. Oh, I gotta find myself one of those. But I can understand where you're coming from, but yeah, you're wrong. So you made mention about how you've kind of gone through the cycles. You buy everything, and now I've got this theory, right? I'm going to run it past you, and this is just let me know what you think about. I think there's different stages. We all know there's different stages of grief and stuff. I reckon there's different stages of collecting. There's the stage where basically you buy anything. If it's a glass skull cup, you will buy it because it's a skull, so it has to be the Phantom. And then you kind of go through the stages where you will probably only go licensed stuff. And then you kind of go, and then I think you kind of hit that stage where you realize, crikey, I've got a lot here. It's not just a collection or an addiction. It's actually coming to the stage of an investment. And that's when I think you start getting serious about preserving your collection. So whether it's framing or putting things in glass cabinets or bagging and boarding, your Phantom comics and stuff like that. So what do you think about that kind of the cycle?
I like your theory, and to build on it, I would offer this. You need to make a distinction, and it is a 1 or 0 binary distinction between being a collector and being a hoarder.
Is there a difference?
Yes, and it's in the curation of the collection. So my Phantom stuff is not mixed in with every newspaper that's ever been delivered to my house and every Aldi catalogue since 2014 or whatever, and empty egg cartons. So the curation of your collection, I think, it changes with your appetite, and that might change with your age, with your circumstances, with your bank balance, with what the thing you're collecting, and in this case, the Phantom, means to you. I had a partner explain to me once something that I never knew about myself, which was that the less satisfied I am with the way my life is going, the more I will spend on my collection. and I went,
going by what's behind you, does that mean you're not satisfied? Or
and I said, well, no, the peaks and troughs would align with those things, those events. And I said, why do you think I do that? It was something that I had never noticed about myself. And it was someone holding a big mirror up to me, and I said, hey, why do you think I do that? Because you know me quite well. And she said, because you are taking comfort in, because it's not just the Phantom that I collect, it's things to do with other superheroes or Jack Reacher or a few things like that. The characters that I like, Indiana Jones, those kind of things. And she said, the less you see justice in the real world, the more you seek it out in a world that you can control. And she was right. And once that was pointed out to me, it helped me make a more informed decision about things in my life and the curation of my collection. Yeah, the things that why do I want this, and do I want it because it will bring me happiness to look at it again, or do I want it because I have to have it? And if it's the second category, is it going to sit in a cupboard and I'm never going to touch it again? And the third thing I would say is, in relation to your theory about the stages of collecting, is I think we become our own connoisseur, right? And I'm going to coin a term that I will give to you to use for future podcasts, and it's like a Phantom, like someone who can choose, just make a distinction between a fine wine and just crushed grapes that have been left for a while. And there's a sommelier who would have that kind of level of passion about the distinction between different wine flavors and bouquets. And I would say that we are our own phantomiers. And it's your taste. So what you're developing is your taste for your collection.
Yeah. So just going on the back of that, and we won't spend too much time on this because otherwise it will drag on. For me, I have a stepdad who's an artist, right? And growing up, there was two things that we connected on. We were like oil and water, did not connect, did not get on well at all. the two things were football, AFL, and the Phantom. They were the only two things we could ever agree on until we were until I was about 20, 21. And so I think a lot of that is, and and we've talked about on the past podcast before about how the Phantom is the Phantom's a generational hero, but also the Collectors is a generational thing as well. So I think there is that as well as that. I tend to go towards art a little bit as well, as you can see, sketch colours, et cetera, and a lot of that's got to do with also because my stepdad is an artist, and so I tend to appreciate art a little bit as well. So.
And did your stepfather have the opportunity to see your collection?
Yeah, he sees it all the time and all that.
What does he think about what is his opinion of? Do you share the interest in the same art?
Not as much, but he does like looking at the art and stuff like that. But he's a collector in other things, and he's got his own hobbies and stuff like that as well, like surfing, downhill mountain bike riding, and stuff like that. So he understands that boys need their toys in more ways than more. All right, so I want to move on a little bit from there. You said that you are a fan. So again, in 5 minutes, which again, Chronicle Chamber means 50 minutes. What are some of your favourite stories?
It's like choosing
favourite child.
So, but ones that stand out for me, because you asked me this question ahead of time, are the Wharf Rats. Yep. And that's because of the amount of tropes and classic panels that are in it, the art and the story. It is a atypical Phantom story by Lee Falk and Cy Barry, and it's them at their height. The Avenger, which is a Tim Fentoman story, which I've reviewed for one of your previous call-outs before. And that's because I love stories that tell a bit about the Phantom lore and how it came to be, and I like stories that address a gap in another Phantom story or a folk story, and that story fills the gap between two of the panels in for those who came in late start to the dailies and Sundays. The Golden Rune saga, because it was one of the first that was when I started collecting, and I'll go back and revisit that because I like the evolution of the story through those 5 issues, and the For Whom the Bell Tolls by Paul Mason, because I'm in it, and the U-boat, I think it's called the U-boat Mystery, which was I think it was the time Paul Ryan took over the strip, but it's basically I like stories where the Phantom's scuba diving and he spends nearly the whole story underwater or in scuba gear.
Yep, that's the boat that's sunk off the island of Eden.
Correct.
Which was one of the few examples, or one of the growing list of examples of Tony D. Paul introducing Phantom Men elements into the newspaper strip. Yeah, awesome. So, all right, I've got some specific questions here. Now, you're aware of the majority of them. I've kind of thrown a couple of other ones in there, but this is going to be, I guess, for those who are not sure kind of what the theme of the podcast is. There isn't really a theme, but we've got some questions and some stuff that you and I have been talking about for probably years. And so we've thought, let's kind of make a bit of a podcast out of it. And it's just two fans dribbling nonsense. And I'm sure there'll be some others that will enjoy it as much as what we are as well. So now, we've talked before about the generational Phantom, right? Now, one of the sad things about the Phantom is that you and we're still classified as the younger generation of Phantom readers.
I think you might be. I think I've left that mantle behind a lot.
Now, we know, and we do, there's some stories in Frew, there's some letters from Frew readers of some 12, 14 and 15-year-old of children that are writing in and stuff like that. So we know that there are teenagers and stuff who do read the Phantom, but primarily, majority of the Frew readers would be probably 50 plus. So how can we get, and this is your opinion, and I know you're going to tread carefully because you also have to make sure that KFS like you for when you pitch a new story. But how, if you were given the keys, if you were given the sandbox, whether it's to the publisher, to KFS or whatever, how would you get new readers? How would you get new fans?
And it is my opinion, because if I knew the answer, you wouldn't be asking the question, because I would be sharing it with the people who can affect the outcome, and the fandom would be a lot more widely recognised. But I think it's brand recognition, and I think the avenues to do it are either, and it's not in the public space as much as it needs to be to get any kind of saturation for readership, particularly new readership. And a lot of the young people that you're talking about have either been drawn in because of the generational thing you talked about. They've been introduced to the fandom by someone else in their family or friend circle. And I've just been sharing my seconds issues, like my doubles, with friends that have got kids at that age. It's just to throw the fishing net out there. And some of them have had quite a lot of take up because they didn't even know it existed before, and a lot of them are used to getting all their content digitally, which brings me to the way I think we should be doing it. Either the IP being used in a TV show or film or animated series or something, or digital content. So whether that's at the local level here with Frew, something like live streams with creators and the publishers, or the development of games, or videos or other content on social media. And I don't mean a post on Facebook, because that's for old people too. It's the content. So look at how kids are getting engaged and becoming obsessed with things like the little plastic toys you get from Woolies, to fourth and fifth tier characters from the Marvel and DC spaces, or the Malaverse, or something that's come from an indie comic book producer, because there was such a hunger for a while there for content that they were putting established IP that might have not even been a recognizable name in the hands of capable creative staff, and they were making gold. Like, who knew who Guardians of the Galaxy was? Yeah.
Well, a lot of those characters that have now got movies and all that, mate, and TV shows and stuff like that, a lot of those comic titles have been discontinued.
Yeah, Moon Knight, you couldn't give comics away 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Sorry to all the Moon Knight fans in the audience.
Yeah, that are also listening to this random podcast. I think you're probably safe. But yeah, so digital. So you're talking. So obviously, the TV show or a movie show, or a movie or a TV show is an obvious one. So you're talking about, like, so how would you do it? Is it, do Frew need to? Is it a Frew thing, or is it a KFS thing?
I think, and it goes towards
like, do we need to create like little mini figurines of the Phantom and put them into, those what do you call it? Those magazines which have got puzzles and stuff in it, and then at the front there's a little toy that's stuck onto it. There's
Yeah, but the thing with it, yes, but it's got to be a concerted effort, and it needs to be a sustained effort, and there's going to be some loss involved in that. So it's a gamble for anyone that does it. And I think that there's enough invested stakeholders in the fandom, like Phantom, Frew, KFS, and there's enough creators that have got a digital footprint themselves to be able to promote and share whatever the content is. But I think it needs to be a deliberate and concerted effort to increase the brand recognition, because otherwise the toy in the K-Zone magazine just becomes another thing that floats around and gets lost down the back of the couch, or the dog chews up. Like, it's got to be, you're trying to create a fan, so you've got to invest them in caring about the little plastic figurine or the story, and you need their attention. And in the age that we live in, information is the oil, is the new oil. So there's so much demand for the attention of fans, and young fans in particular. The Phantom can't be heard over the noise. And at the DC Fandom event last year, that they did some digital releases of information and interviews because of the impact of the pandemic. They couldn't have the live New York Comic Con appearance, so they were releasing a lot of their news and data on that. And one of the people that presented was, and I've forgotten his name, and he was he was a neuroscientist that had come from like a space program or something, that was now working for DC in their story department, and it was about immersive storytelling. And they were using Young Justice, I think, which Peter David writes for, I'm pretty sure, who wrote the some fan stories for DC, and Herms, and it's about using the established IP of the not, what are they called? What's the Teen Titans, I think it is, or Young Justice.
Yeah, so there's DC Superhero Girls.
One of those shows, and it's basically involving. It's changing the way that they produce content so that the storytelling is more immersive. And so they've released stuff where the storytelling is, you'll see a character's point of view, and they'll have a head-up display on their goggles from their costume, and you'll get information that's integral to the story from the words that are on the screen. No one's telling you the exposition, you're seeing it and you're figuring it out yourself. And they're talking about, games that you play along with the TV show or the film or whatever it is. And there's a project they're working on using Batman as the vehicle, where you would be watching a story and it's registering, the algorithm is picking up the algorithm on your system to say how long you normally pay attention for, the things that interest you, and where your eyes are going with the camera on your device, and it sees that you've stopped paying attention, or it knows you're also on your phone, and so it stops the show, and the story has a beat in it that stops, and Batman tells you that he's going to rest and that he needs your help later, and he'll summon you when he needs you. And you'll get a message on the app on your phone later on saying you've been summoned to the Bat computer or whatever, and you put your device back on and get back into the story, because everyone's experience would be different. And Jermayn Parker would have a different experience with that same content than Duncan Munro would. Just like if you Googled, great Indian restaurants near me, you'd get a different response than I would, even if we were sitting next to each other on Google.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
It's the same science. It was fascinating. And so I think the Frew tried to do a little bit with digitizing their catalog onto Comixology. The transition that Comixology has gone through across to Kindle, and the issues with the app that are across their fan base, across all the content that they've got, aren't helping Frew. And I think it was mentioned in one of the letters to the editor, the challenges that they're experiencing, and no new stuff is getting uploaded, which is an opportunity missed, but it would be an opportunity to disrupt it anyway because of the problems that the app is having. But the digital content could be anything from a game or an online puzzle or something that is in the Phantom universe, but is a way for people to be introduced to the Phantom as a character and as a world. Because
does the Phantom need a TikTok account, or do we need to have like a dancing Phantom so then we can see like footballers and all that when they do their goal celebration? They can do the ghosty walks or the slam evil pose or something. It
could be
like
something
that.
as similar as an IP relationship with something else is popular like Fortnite, where King Features lends the Phantom's image to be able to be used in a game like that to at least create awareness. Like, you've got this big pool of people that are all fascinated and obsessed with Fortnite, and all you need is a small portion of that to go, who's that dude?
Yeah, or it will be the case of, oh, the Phantom. My dad used to read that, or I remember that, or and stuff like that. I know, was it Stephen did an article just recently on the new WWE video game, which had the Rey Mysterio Phantom outfit.
Yep.
So, yeah. Awesome. Well, that's some great food for thought. Hopefully, I know KFS do listen to some of our podcasts, so hopefully they have a bit of a listen, and it kind of gives them a bit of food for thought. But I do agree that digital is a big step. So from a publisher point of view, like if you were, if Renee and Glenn said, Duncan, here's the keys, I'm over it, take over it, like what would you do?
Well, the first thing I do with Frew is if that's what you're talking about, is I would reinvigorate the digital footprint that they did have, and I would work with the creators that I had access to increase the reach of Frew, because the people that are following Frew's Facebook account are the people that are already buying Frew stuff. Yeah. But there are people that follow Paul Mason or Jamie Johnson or Warren Boyce or Jeff Weigel that aren't necessarily there because of the Phantom. But they've been brought there by their other work. And it's just there's another way to raise awareness. I'd collaborate more with King Features and Team Phantomen in that Team Phantomen model, where they were having the creators work together to develop, longer term storylines or a greater outlook on what they would and wouldn't address in their stories, and assigning projects out that way. And then,
sorry, just interrupting there. Could you have a larger story arc that cross platforms Team Phantom and Frew, and also the newspaper stories?
Yeah, but I think to do it would be a little disruptive, because you would leave people, and this is what a lot of the two big comic publishers did in the 80s and 90s, where they created those crossover stories where you had to buy, all 4 Superman titles and 3 of the Batman titles and Batgirl and the Robin issues to get all of the story tied together. Somewhere where they did it well was No Man's Land, and the storyline there went for almost 2 years in the Batman space in the Gotham verse. But where it all fell apart is things where they had to have an event like Cross at Infinite Earths with Marvel, and is that right? The multiverse with Marvel, and I think Crisis on Infinite Earths with DC, and they had to create an event because they had Earth 1 to 345, and they had to try and align the continuity somewhere, and so they had to smash all the train sets together and have one storyline emerge. And every time they try to rebirth things like the New 52, they start to go down that path again, where they're alienating new readers, because Stan Lee said every comic is someone's first, so you can't make it too confusing. And so there's a balance between drawing people in and then giving them a hunger to look for more things, and tying things together in such a complex way that no one can keep up with the story. But I think, so an example of that would be someone following the daily story, finding out that there was a continuation of Jeff and Tony's story in a Frew comic, and they can't access it because they're accessing their local newspaper to find the story, or Comics Kingdom, but they can't get the comic book. And that's why King Features needs to be involved in whatever the strategy is with the character.
Awesome. So, are you a forkist, a modernist, or where do you sit on that divisive issue?
Here's where I sit, and it's well and truly with splinters in my backside from being on the fence. But fork is king, but his inattention to his own character created a continuity nightmare. And so both as a fan and as a creator, I find myself struggling to stay true to Falk's continuity, try to blend it with the Team Phantomen world that has been created, and which is a lot more rich and diverse because of the amount of creators that they've had inputting into over 1,000 stories, and it goes back to what conversation we just had. And I think the solution there needs to be greater alignment between Team Phantomen, King Features, and Frew, so that in that Team Phantomen model, where there is a greater planning horizon for storylines, and the arcs are able to be in parallel but not be inconsistent.
So you're saying there needs to be a Phantom Bible?
With Phantom Bible would be a good starting point, Joe.
Yes.
But it's more about it's also course correction. So the Phantom Bible is a historical document, a little bit of a planning tool, and like Phantom Wiki is more the detail and history. But I mean, there needs to be active, positive control over the future storylines that are coming out, because the diehard fans want to see consistency.
Yeah. Well, KFS now have, I guess, editorial oversight in a sense that every story, every piece of art has to be approved in a sense, which
that's passive control,
which has its benefits and positives. But I guess KFS probably also, while they've got that editorial or the IP control, they probably also need to be able to employ or to be able to create a umbrella which has got someone like a Tony DePaul, and then these other key creators who know the character or fans who be able to then to be able to control it.
Yeah, I think King's role in it would be not much more than it'd be minimal. And a lot of the measures they've got in place are passive control measures, where a story is submitted to them, they consider it, and they go yes or no. But I'm talking about positive control, where the creators as a group, under the stewardship of Team Frew or the Frew crew or Team Phantomen, and with Tony and his artists, work towards saying this is where the character is going. This is the 3, 5, 10-year plan for the character, and then you can populate stories and assign talent to create them. And if someone's doing a Crazy Ivan out there left field story, and the little people come back, or Liz gets elected as president of Bengala, King Features can go, stop. Thank you for your contribution. You can go and sit in the corner for a little while with the conical shaped hat on.
Yeah, at my daughter's school, it's called the yellow chair.
Yellow chair.
The timeout chair.
Thank you, Mr. Pigeon. Sit in the yellow chair with you.
And you can come back and join us when you've had a hard thought about your destructive behaviour. So talking about destructive behaviour, do we need to kill off the 21st Phantom?
So, and I know this is contrary to your beliefs, but and I'm in your house, so I'm trying to be polite. But
that hasn't stopped you before, mate. So.
That's why I'm not back in your actual house. But I will go on record as saying that the Lee Falk created the perfect storytelling tool or deceit to be able to continually regenerate who the Phantom was, which Phantom we had. His opportunity to do that was around 30 years after he started, to probably no more than 50 years after he started. And because we're well past that, I think the opportunity to do that has gone, because now you're just going to alienate people who think that the 21st is our Phantom. You've created that canon that says the 21st Phantom is who the Phantom is, and then all these other stories are also the Phantom, but they're the historical tales from the Chronicles. If you create if you let the kids take over now or whatever happens, like in the Dynamite series where Lothar took over, you will find people saying, that's not my
phantom.
And when we've just spent a lot of time talking about the loyalty of the fans that we do have is what is keeping the character alive in the countries where it's popular, like India and Scandinavia and Australasia. We're at risk of polluting the ever shallower that's bad writing, the ever more shallow pool, and so it's not a river that's feeding the pool and filling it up. It's a currently a stagnant pool that we would like to fill more water or make bigger, but we're not in a position to do it. And so I say, everyone out of the pool.
But the problem with all right. So follow-up question. So 21st Phantom is always around, which then gets us into the problem that we have with Batman, that we have with Punisher. Like, he was in Vietnam, then he was in Desert Storm, now he's in Afghanistan and stuff like that. How does that fit with the 21st Phantom, who was around in Second World War, who was around in Vietnam, who was around in, the Korean War, who was around in, First Desert Storm and 9/11 and the war in Afghanistan and stuff like that? How, like, if someone was to create a Phantom story geared around Second World War, which Phantom do you have to use?
I say it's the 21st because, and to use your comparison with the Punisher or Batman, it's still Frank Castle. It's not Douglas Castle, right? It's whether his PTSD is coming from his time in Afghanistan or he's coming from his time in Vietnam, doesn't matter. If he's coming from his time in a conflict between Russia and the Ukraine or whatever evolves out of that, it doesn't matter. The essence of the character should stay the same, and it's the same with Batman. Batman is always in his mid-30s, and sometimes we're telling a story about his year one where he's still making mistakes and tripping over his cape. We might tell stories like Batman Beyond where he's talking to Terry, I can't remember the name, but it's still Bruce Wayne who's sitting there as an old man in the Batcave giving Terry Guinness, giving advice to someone who has taken over the mantle of Batman, but he's not Batman. The guy in the chair is Batman, and the Phantom is the same. So our 21st Phantom, and it's a comic book is my answer.
but we were just talking about how fans like fans like things tied up neatly. They don't like contradictions, and
I think that's the deceit of the character. So that's the suspension of disbelief, is that the Phantom is now. If the story is now, the Phantom is now. And if I'm reading a Wilson McCoy story set in the late 30s where the Phantom is, meeting Diana, that's Kit. That's the 21st Phantom who took over from his father when his dad was stabbed in the back by Bar Singh or whatever it was. And I am willing to take the conceit that he doesn't have a mobile phone in that story. And I'm willing to accept that he's got a mobile phone in Hero Complex. Or, I'll tolerate that the kids are getting older. And if there is a storyline where the Phantom dies on the way to Gravelines, or the Kit and Heloise take over, that's a story about the 22nd Phantom. It's not a story about the 21st changing to someone else. And it's not the current Phantom. The current Phantom will always, to me, should always be the 21st Phantom. Because you see other characters like Batman has died in the comics. Batman's ended up in a wheelchair, and John Paul Valley's taken over as Batman, and Dick Grayson's taken over and worn the costume. But I read those and say, yeah, but it's not Batman.
Yeah.
And the other part of that story, the other part of that answer is with your World War II example, is we've already got us a in canon, whether you're focused or not, Falk story where the Phantom is in World War II, and Diana's in it, so it's the 21st Phantom. To retcon it and say anything in 1945 is now the 19th Phantom is to me is sacrilegious to the canon, because it's saying, well, I'm saying my story is right and the Phantom Goes to War is wrong.
Okay, so at the moment, you're right. We have the Phantom Goes to War, which is featuring the 21st Phantom, and then you have other stories of the Second World War where it is featuring the 19th or the 20th Phantom. I can't remember the top of my head. So, how does the 20th Phantom just never exist? And then we've talked about how we like continuity, we like things that make sense. Every Phantom previously has a 20 to 30 year cycle as the Phantom, and so then does it just not work? Does it just not happen?
I think the opportunity to do it is in the past by about.
Yes, I'll agree with that.
And so that we need to row the boat with the oars we've got. And the thing to me that makes the most sense is to take that established superhero trope, Dick Tracy's in a similar time period to the Phantom in terms of that daily strip evolution that he's had. But they're telling stories now where he's got access to modern equipment and crime solving techniques. And the example I'll give is Seinfeld. And so Seinfeld went for 10 seasons or whatever it was. And if you go back and watch that in the 90s, and if you go back and watch that show now, it's still funny. But if you took any scene from Seinfeld that was the difficult situation that created the circumstances of the show about nothing, whatever made that episode funny, almost everything can be solved with a mobile phone or a smartphone. Because there's a misunderstanding, or they don't know something, or haven't checked something, which they could have in the palm of their hand and solve the problem. And the show wouldn't be funny, but to me it's still entertaining. I've been rewatching the show again and thinking about that and going, it doesn't wreck it that couldn't happen now. It's still of the time. It's still funny, and I think the Phantom is the same. So I can tell a story today where he's using a drone to try and find the bad guys. And then I can go and tell a story where he's putting on a trench coat and a hat, and he's sitting there listening into, people's conversations in a bar because he ordered milk and he has a fight with everybody.
Very good thoughts. All right. Well,
the other thing I'll say before I get off my soapbox is, with your argument, and you want the current Phantom to change because it's been 30 years and he has to change over or whatever. If you add up even the folk stories and take the amount of time it would have taken for the Phantom to actually have those experiences, it would exceed 30 years. Do you get what I mean by that? Like the amount if we put aside the amount of knocks to the head, and I know Dan loves those, and broken bones that he would have had and gunshot wounds that he's recovered from, and times he's been poisoned and whatever, the amount of time he's spent the 21st Phantom has spent traveling around the world, getting in adventures, sitting in the Skull Cave waiting for people to come and ask him for their help, going on holiday with Diana, raising kids. If you just take the stuff that we've seen in the pages of comic stories that were written by Lee Falk or Tony DePaul, it's more than 30 years worth of time has passed in the story. So even if we had this content and we played it out real time, the Phantom would not still be in his mid-30s and able to do that stuff. He'd be 70. So I'll leave that with you.
Okay, fair enough. All right, well, so if anyone's listening and wants to rebuttal or wants to disagree with Duncan, make sure you let us know either via social media or something like that. I'll look forward to some other fans giving us their opinions. Now, so we've talked a little bit about, we kind of talked about your fan side of things. So now I probably want to get a little bit more into your creator side of things. So now, the Phantom's world is quite large. You've talked about his and the Little People. I know you're great fans of them. So what are some other underutilized elements of the Phantom that you would, either as a fan or as a creator, that you would like to draw back in and explore a little bit more?
Things, some of it is I felt so passionate about re-including them that I've written stuff that I've submitted for consideration. But the type of things that I like is I think there's more scope to explore where some of the phantom tropes come from. So like the old jungle sayings, the story behind where that old jungle saying came from. And I've done some stories about previous phantoms where there's a scene that explains where that old jungle saying came from. I think
Team Phantom did a couple of those, and I really enjoyed those.
Yeah, and but I think there's scope for further. I think, and the Avenger was a good example of explaining where some of those phantom came from, where he got his training and all that sort of stuff. And in the same tone, I think that there's a lot, the rich history through the ancestors, if we can ever figure out which ancestor aligns to which period of history.
Well, it's got to be a lot harder when you've got a fluid 21st Phantom.
Yeah, but I don't think it's...
Because then you're going to be having stories where the 19th Phantom is around where there's no, where there's horse or carriages. And then, or does he always stay in that same time zone? Or does he move around as well?
In the same time zone. And to correct these things in the future, that's where I think this collaborative effort needs to come from. But I think the ancestors, there's a rich history there that has been explored, but I think there's a lot more to be explored from there.
Oh yeah.
Diana, I think, is a character who was kind of one-dimensional. She was the weekly hostage, and then probably during Size time working with Lee Falk, she became more of a rounded character, a bit more three-dimensional, and she got more depth. Tony DePaul's explored some of those aspects of her character, and so have some of the Team Phantoman stories, but I think there's more. She's a richer character than that, and I think she needs to get more of an opportunity to show who Diana is as a powerful character, and I think I always like stories that fill a gap. And so I mentioned the Avengers filling that gap between the two panels for those that came in late. I tried to do it in Shameful Trade with Daniel Picciotto, where it was an Eastern Dark story that was addressing, if you look through in that annual, if you look through those other stories from the Lee Falk Cy Barry era, he always mentions that the 14th Phantom came back and stopped the traders, but that story's never been told. And Lee, not paying enough attention to his own continuity. In some of those stories says 14 and some of them says 13. But the one panel that it shows is slavers taking people from the village and the Phantom blowing a ship up. And so Shameful Trade is attempting to tell that story that is in that panel, which hasn't been addressed previously.
So is that the 13th or the 14th Phantom?
Well, that's why it's the Phantom and his son, because it's both.
Okay.
So it's the 15th Phantom with the...
That was something we did raise in the podcast, is what number Phantom it is.
And it's written in the script as the 13th, with Kit being the 14th, because Kit has a pivotal role in ending that chapter of the Eastern Dark. And the last thing is that I think has been used, but I think has much richer avenues of storytelling to explore, is the Jungle Patrol.
Okay, interesting. So what do you mean by that? Like, how could they be used better?
I've gone as far as pitching a separate series that's
okay,
set in the Phantom universe, but the Phantom is in it, but not the main character, because I think there's so much potential. People like stories about, procedurals and stuff about the military and law enforcement, and it's both. And that evolution can be anything from its inception with the 6th Phantom and Redbeard starting it. There's stories to tell there. There's more ground to cover, I think, around those periods where the colonels have changed over, or the COs have changed. Yeah, the COs have changed over. Team Phantomen explored a little bit with the Unknown Commander story, where the thing infiltrated the Jungle Patrol, and I've written stories of pitched stories set in the future of what the Jungle Patrol could look like moving forward.
Okay. I like the idea of, I guess you would call them secondary characters getting more limelight. It was one of Team Phantomen did some short stories of Heloise, Diana. Diana solved a mystery on her own. There was a chief's daughter or something from Luongo or Wambezi or something, where it's these secondary characters that you don't know much about, but exploring them and giving them more depth, more character. You raise a good point about Redbeard. Like, for a project that I'm working on, I looked at it recently. There's I think it's, besides the Lee Falk one, there's maybe 5 or 6 other stories that actually feature Redbeard in it.
Yeah.
And for Redbeard, who is such a pivotal character, everyone loves Redbeard. To have less than 10 stories about Redbeard. There was a Phantom, I think it's the 15th Phantom. 15th, or I think it's the 15th. There is, across through the newspaper stories, Team Phantom and every other, Moonstone and, every other Tom, Dick and Harry smaller publisher, there's less than 10 or 12 stories actually about that Phantom as well. That's I like that. With the Jungle Patrol, do you think, how without giving too much away with your plot and your story synopsis that you've obviously submitted, is there anything you could tell us about basically how you could explore the Jungle Patrol a little bit better?
Sure. So the thing that's set in the future is not that far in the future, but it's recognizing some of the geopolitical things that would be impacting a paramilitary force that's servicing an African nation in the deepest unexplored parts of the jungle. And that concept of the deep unexplored jungle is becoming is almost becoming its own suspension of disbelief, because we live in a world where you can sit on your computer and see satellite images of almost everything. So someone would have figured out where the Skull Cave is. But this paramilitary group that is tasked with security in a place where few other people would go, whether it's a stability or a peacekeeping mission or a crime investigating commission, is going to, I think, needs to evolve with what the situation, what the types of experience and situations that a country like Bengala would be experiencing as it evolves and develops. So I think that there would be a large terrorism threat, and the opportunity to use some of those undisclosed locations around the jungle as terrorism, as for opportunity for terrorism financing or terrorist training. And so the government can't say, I've put this guy in purple tights in charge of finding those people and getting rid of them. The patrolling needs to be done by an organised group that's resourced to do that. And so the story that I created was it's more of a counter-terrorism unit that's been developed that sometimes gets borrowed by Mawatan. It would be contributing to some of the combined gendarmerie forces that support a lot of the other African nations and travel in support of the UN or whatever. And so there's opportunities to explore some of those storylines there, that you're not just bound by the confines of the deep woods. But I also think that there's parts of the Phantom world, like the Misty Mountains and the Princes, and some of the areas of the jungle that the Jungle Patrol would be involved in conducting operations in, that would make for rich and interesting stories. And it gives you the opportunity to explore some of those tech solutions in a modern storytelling environment without compromising too much of what people see as the traditional Phantom, jungle-born skills.
I like the Jungle Patrol, I really do. I get the feeling that in some stories, they're almost portrayed as like Boy Scouts, where they're dressed up in their little Boy Scouts outfits, and they're basically just sitting around drinking coffee, playing ping pong, while the Phantom does all the work, and then they accidentally stumble upon something, or they clean up the Phantom's mess. So you're basically saying that and I agree with you that they should be their own autonomous bunch of superheroes in a sense.
Yeah, I think there's scope to develop characters that people will care about, to be able to bring into the Phantom's world and have the Phantom play a part in that. And I don't want it to sound like Gotham Central, which was the Ed Brubaker series with DC, where it dealt with Gotham City Police Department, but you never saw Batman. Like, it was always about, hey, we've got he only shows up at night, so we've got till daytime to solve this crime where someone who's freezing people has started killing cops, and they're under the pump, not just to fight the criminal or solve the crime, but to do it before Batman turns up and steals their crook away. I don't want it to be like that.
There's ways where the Phantom can. There's ways the Phantom can help, in the sense of, if there's like a historical crime or something like that, they're solving the crime, and then the Phantom goes, well, back in the 18th century there was this hideout or something like that, and it passes messages through the safe, but it's the Jungle Patrol that solves the problem. But we see the Phantom, but he's playing that commander role rather than the white horse, riding on the white horse type of role.
Yeah, and I'll tell you a spoiler from the first chapter of the story, which is that the Jungle Patrol are, again, it's set in the undisclosed near future. The Jungle Patrol are doing a deliberate action on a stronghold because they've got a terror cell that they're arresting. They're all complaining. The patrol members are all kitted up in their CTU gear, and they're all complaining because the new boss, it's all political correctness gone mad, and a woman who's an academic has been promoted to be the first female colonel of the Jungle Patrol, and she's hardly been in. They've used her academic uni career as a criminologist to be, why she got the job, and it's that she's breaking the glass ceiling, kind of this dissension amongst the ranks. They're dissatisfied. I should be doing that. I've been here for 20 years. I like the old boss better, blah, blah, blah. And it's just that the current CEO has been incapacitated. And so she's the 2IC, and she's been put in charge of this operation. And as they start to do that, but they do their job anyway. And as they start to, but there's this tension with the boss, as they start to execute the deliberate action, they get overwhelmed, and a shadowy figure in a purple suit starts giving them a bit of a chop out and taking some of the targets out. They're still doing the job. They don't know he's there. And he's just making sure that, as the commander's making sure that the operation goes well without really telling them that he's there. And at the conclusion of that story, the CO is sitting in her office, and the Phantom comes in, and she says, without looking up, she says, I know you were there tonight. And he said, I'm the commander of this, organization. I need to make sure that they're safe. I have a vested interest. And she said, but it was my operation. And she says, just because you're 30 seconds older doesn't mean you're in charge of everything. And it's that she's Heloise and Kit's taken over as the 22nd Phantom.
Oh.
And so the story goes on that the tension between those two is she's his boss. He's her boss. So she's the commander of the Jungle Patrol. She's the CEO of the Jungle Patrol. He's the commander. And so no one can know, and no one can know the connection between those. So there's a few opportunities to play with that through the story.
Mm.
So I pitched a 6-issue miniseries, which hasn't moved anywhere.
All right. Well, I can't ask the question when we're going to see that in print then. No, so yeah, I like that where the fandom's still there. It's the fandom's well, but it's the secondary characters getting more development. And I think that also helps when we see products. We need to see products of more than just the Phantom, in a sense. And I think these characters getting more developed, it's going to be able to help when we can say, well, I like Heloise, I like the female Phantom. Because at the moment it's the Phantom and that's it. And occasionally we might get Hero, we might get Devil, but there's Diana, there's in the newspaper stories there's the Longo Queen who's, a young up and comer, there's Colonel Wurraboo or Colonel Walker in your case. There's all these other characters, Luaga, etc., and stuff like that. And I think for the character, we need to be able to grow. We need to be able to grow some of these other characters, and I think that's where Tony DePaul's doing a great job with the Nomad and Chatu, the Python, and stuff like that. He's really doing an invested interest in some of these secondary characters.
And I think in the Australian side of it, Andrew Constant and Paul Mason's Kid Phantom was an opportunity to do that I think was potentially, I think it's probably cut short. I think it's very unfortunate because I think that if it had, and I understand like it's a financial decision and it's and you've got to cut bait at some point, but I think it was one of the fresher takes to a different audience, to appeal to a different audience that doesn't find appealing reading a story with Raymore art reprinted from the 40s.
Yeah, on a dodgy photocopier where everything's fuzzy.
And I think it's a great shame because the young people which is who that's targeted at, who I knew who read that, loved it. Yeah, definitely.
Not enough. So in the plethora of stories that you've written and the synopsis and plots and stuff like that you are waiting for artists to create and King Features to give you the final yes and all that, have you ever got the Phantom coming back to Australia?
I know I owe you a story. So there's two with Frew at the moment that are set in Australia in the past. And I know I owe you a story where we addressed Diana's competing in the 1956 Melbourne Olympics. And I haven't submitted it, but I've done the synopsis and I did a follow-up for a two-parter where to go back to an earlier point, we explore the aspect of Diana the Explorer's part of her history, which I don't think is being developed enough.
Yeah, because she was what's actually interesting is if you actually reread the Sing Brotherhood story, her father was a scientist and she followed on from that work, but she makes mention of it that's mentioned in the first story, but never again. So there's another hole for, I know someone like a Matt Guyon would find that interesting as well.
It is interesting, and I'm aware of the reference you're talking about, and it may be relevant in what I just told you.
Okay, fair enough.
But
you've kind of got that look like, don't say anything more.
if you want to see the Phantom come back to Australia, put some pressure on Dudley and Glenn to read my scripts.
There you go, Dudley and Glenn. Find some more time in your day. Find that time machine that slows down time and read some more scripts. Okay, so while we're talking about stories and all that, what was it like having your stories published in a Phantom magazine?
That was amazing, and took me by surprise. So when Phantom produced Hero Complex, I wasn't aware of that until a fan, sent me the advertisement saying it was coming out, and then I think you sent it to me as well, saying that it was in the previous issue, saying it was coming out. And it was unfortunate that format wasn't something that was economically viable to produce new stories in, because I would have liked to have had the 3 parts of that story released there for Norwegian fans. In the Phantom comics, it was I got a bit of notice because Andreas reached out and asked me whether Badua was Samarika's maternal or paternal grandfather or uncle, whatever it was, because it's a different word in Swedish, and so he wanted to make sure that it was accurate. And it was one, nice to be asked, and two, I knew the character and my work was in good hands because someone cared enough to ask that question. And Andreas is the perfect person to be in the role that he's in. It gave me a sense of power because I got to make the decision about what that history is, because Badua is not my character. He's Lee Fox. And so I got to say which genomic sequencing she had.
So would have it been nice to see it in color, or you like it in it being published in black and white?
Well, it'd always be nice to see it in color. I think Jeff Weigel, knowing that the story was going to be in black and white with Frew, put a tone through it that gave it an incredible depth that I probably can't show you what's on there, but for people that have read that story, if you imagine that with just the line work, some of Jeff's work would have been lost, whereas I think he gave an extra dimension to it by putting the shading in each of the artwork across the panels, and I think that you'd almost have to take that away before you colorize it to do Jeff's work justice. And a colorist would beg to differ and tell me I'm wrong, but it'd be nice to see it, and it was definitely interesting seeing it on the quality paper that they'd used, and hopefully I'll get an opportunity to get some feedback on whether the fans in Scandinavia enjoyed it. And the work that's getting done by Daniel Picciotto on a story that we're working on at the moment, he had a similar challenge where he looked at some, I can't remember what it's called, like a wash through some of the artwork because it was going to be in black and white. But he's cross-hatching and line work is so fine. I think it would look great on color when the right paper. But yeah, it was absolutely amazing to see it getting printed in other countries.
All right, so we've just talked about color and paper quality. So got to ask you, should Frew go full color, full time, or half, or?
I know full color is an economic question for them and a challenge. Obviously, I would love to see it, particularly with the new stories. I think some of the classic stories wouldn't necessarily be served by it, but our mutual good friend and a friend of the show, Pete Klaus, recently sent me some stuff, and it was an extra gift of an original Sunday newspaper clipping. And I've read that story a lot, but it's a beautiful, the color still looks vibrant and alive now. And I think I've never seen that story even in the Hermes editions, produced with that vibrancy of color, of the color. And but the paper should definitely stay with this is a fortunate accident that they've had.
Yeah, I love the paper.
This is like Alexander Fleming discovering penicillin on his moldy cheese or whatever. Like this is a
and there's a phantom story about that as well.
Yes. But I think they should keep it, because when they do those issues in color, I think they will benefit from it, and it might keep some people quiet about trying to push them to put everything in color, which I know they can't do.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more about the paper quality. It's amazing for an extra 25 cents. You know, just the thickness, just the the comics, they call them floppies, don't they? Because they're floppy. It's like you hold the two comics together, and we'll talk about this when I do the review with the other guys, and you flip them, and there is such a stark difference, and the vibrancy of the black and white, it's amazing.
I absolutely agree.
Now we're wrapping up, so I've got a couple more things. Now, you've listened to most of our podcasts and stuff like that, and we've talked and we've reviewed some of your stories and stuff like that. Now, I have to give you the right of passage. Is there anything that we have said in reviewing your stories, or anything about anything else that you've been yelling at the podcast as you've been listening to it, or as you've been training and they're getting weird looks from the person next to you on the train or something like that? Is there anything that you have to set the record straight about your review of your stories, or about another topic that we've discussed over the past 200 plus episodes?
I appreciate the right reply. And there was only one. There was only one time where I've yelled at the car radio.
Really? Only once?
And Tony DePaul fixed it by telling you how to pronounce ingenue.
So you knew how to say it. You knew how to pronounce that straight away.
Yeah.
Do you know? So I just didn't even bother trying to pronounce it, and then I threw the guys under the bus and included the soundbite on the video on the clip and all that.
that wrong, the particular wrong has already been corrected. So
So there's nothing else. What about some of our reviews of your stories? Were we fair, or?
Well, I can't appropriately adjust your opinion over Zoom. You have to wait until I repeat that performance at the Supernova, or I just appear behind you out of the darkness, and then once again say, now I would like to take the opportunity to exercise my right of reply.
Although you've only got it on the podcast, you only get to do it in person, because we're separated by 5 hours flight.
No, you've been very fair and very supportive, and I couldn't have asked, like the fans in Australia have been, who've shown the support with letters to the editor or comments to me, either directly or via social media. I couldn't have felt more supported by the fan base in Australia.
Awesome. All right. Anything else that you feel like we might have missed?
I think we've very well and truly gone over your 5-minute limit and covered most of it.
Now, before we go, we've as you know, we're doing a bit of a thing for fundraising for Ukraine, where artists and people are donating art. So I'm just going to pin you again. So for everyone who's on YouTube, you'll be able to see this. So which one of those did you say you were donating for the Ukraine fundraiser?
I told you, it's this drawing over here that I've done with a Crayola. Dedicated it to you.
So it wasn't one of those ones behind you, or?
But I wanted to, like that and the Bushfire book and all the work that the team does there. And it's a small crew that you've got producing a lot of content. You're doing a fantastic job. So on behalf, as the fan talking to you, I want to thank you for continuing to keep the flag waving and producing that content, including your 2 absent friends. And an honourable mention to Joe, who started it all off. And as the creator, I want to thank you, because you've been very supportive of the work that I've done.
No worries, mate. Well, I appreciate that. It's nice to It's nice to hear that, you know, that there's at least one person out there that thinks we're doing a good job. No, in all seriousness, it is. You know, it's not an easy thing. We do this in our spare time. We like to, you know, we've got that little catchy little phrase. What is it? By fans for the fans. But we do try and do that. So no, I appreciate that. I appreciate your time today as well, Duncan. I appreciate you coming on and having a bit of a chin wag for us. For those who have listened to it, I hope you've enjoyed it as well. If there's any moments where you were yelling at the car radio or something like that, make sure you let us know either on our email, which is chroniclechamber@gmail.com, or on our website, which is chroniclechamber.com. We're on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We're not on TikTok yet because I'm not really sure any of the three of us will look good in lycra, doing a dance or doing the Ghost Who Walks shuffle or something like that. So until we get someone who looks a little bit better than us in lycra, we probably won't be on TikTok. Duncan, you up for that one?
No advance.
We're on YouTube. We're also on various podcast apps like iTunes and Spotify as well. So hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you've had a bit of a laugh, had some fun. Make sure you all stay safe. It's still a crazy world out there. And for myself, happy fans.
Happy Phan.
On the skull of the man who killed his dad, he said, I'm mad, I must eradicate piracy, injustice and cruelty, and all my sons will follow me, so evildoers will believe that this man cannot die. The Phantom, the ghost who walks. The Phantom, enemies beware, the Phantom's always there, but you won't mind the Phantom. He fights